Hey pilots, welcome to the third episode of the Ramjet Anvil show, and I'm here with Frank, my co-host, and myself, Martijn, and today we're going to talk about, well, more parachutes to start with.
Yes.
Last time we did parachutes, and well, I think lots of people liked it.
Definitely. I liked it.
Well, that's good. Like, we gotta love the thing that we make.
We received a lot of great comments on the parachute release, which is actually why we have a bug fix release ready for you today.
Yeah. I'm playing it right now. You can. It's live on the itch.io page, just like the first one. It's still free. And while there's not too much new content in there, we did fix some important things that were just downright preventing some people from playing. Right.
So I think the most important bug fix is the startup crash that we had at when you were loading some kind of parachute, it would just crash. And we spent a few days to try and figure out what went wrong there.
Yeah. It turns out we had a couple of physics bugs in there ultimately. Really subtle ones that would mean that in some cases the game would just explode. In most cases it wouldn't happen. But if you were playing on a certain computer or with a certain build or some specific thing would happen and the game would just go, I don't know.
Yeah. So this is why we didn't have a 32-bit release.
Exactly. Which sounds like madness because it's the same game engine and the same physics engine. Why would it be so different at 32 bits? And that's what stumped us for quite a couple of days as well.
So it turns out that the physics engine is quite a bit different on 64-bit machines than it is on 32-bit machines.
Yeah, there's some scenarios that it turns out the 64-bit version of NVIDIA Physics, which Unity uses internally, can handle one of the situations that we weren't handling all that well, where numbers kind of started behaving strangely. And in the 64-bit version, it recovers, and you still get numbers in your simulation that make sense, that you can draw on the screen and go, hey, the parachute's here, and there's this much force everywhere. The 32-bit version would take the same scenario, it would just go, I don't know what this is, and it just outputs not a number, which is, if you're a programmer making physics simulations, not a number is not something you want to see if you're dealing with numbers, and so it crashes. Yeah. Doesn't do that anymore.
So basically, to explain a little bit about how that works, is if you end up with a value that's not a number. If you add something to that, you can add 3 to another number, the result will always be not a number. So any calculation you will be doing will result in not a number. So basically you're...
Once you have a number that is not a number or not meaningfully represented as a number, the damage is already done. You can't really recover from this in a meaningful way other than to say, I'm gonna stop the program now. And that's a crash, basically.
Right. But to find the source of that, not a number, it's quite hard actually, because at some point your calculations will blow up. But that's not necessarily the place where it has gone wrong. Right?
No. Once you see the infamous not a number pop up, the damage is already done. The thing that caused it has already passed. So you need to look further back in time to figure out what is the thing that caused this situation to happen in the first place. And that's difficult.
Yeah.
Especially when it's a subtle difference between 32 and 64-bit builds. But the nice thing is, we got a lot out of it. We understood the physics engine a lot better, and we figured out that there were some things that we were doing that we could be doing in a better way, to just be more compatible with the way real-time physics in games work on modern computers. So it's increased our understanding of what we're actually doing quite a lot, and so it's been 2 very productive weeks in that sense.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So another thing that I want to talk about in this release is the new control scheme.
Yes. that's been your responsibility. You took really good care of that. So tell us about it.
All right. So the new control scheme is actually quite simple. Addition to what's already there. So what's already there is you have the triggers that will maybe you can show it. With the triggers you can manipulate the line. You can pull the lines, and with the buttons you can select the various lines that are on the parachute.
Yeah. So now I'm pulling on the front lines, which incidentally is also a bit more stable because we did these physics changes. What's different? Because this is how the situation was last time. What's new?
Right. So when you're on a keyboard, you have lots of keys. So it doesn't make any sense to switch the triggers for pulling lines with the keys. Why not just manipulate the lines directly with the keys instead of having this trigger in between? So it's now possible to map all the lines individually, so you can do that on the joystick or a keyboard or whatever.
Yeah.
And it would make controlling the parachute on various input devices a lot easier, I think.
Yeah, so basically whichever device you want to use now to control the game, you have more control over which lines you want to control specifically.
Right.
Whether you want to combine any of them, switch between them, or...
Yeah, you can even combine them. Yeah, that's true. I didn't realize that.
Yeah. So it's you have more control over how much you want to control the individual pieces of the simulation as well.
Yeah.
And this is a first modest step where you're going to be able to later do this much more thoroughly even than we're doing now. We have big plans for that, because the more complex the simulation is going to be, the more complex and powerful and flexible this input mapping needs to be.
Mm-hmm.
But this is just a very good step.
Yeah. So, just for the sake of being thorough about it, the trigger system is still a very valid option. You can still use that.
I love them.
It's unchanged, right? So
yeah.
It's not like we compromised on it or anything. Yeah.
No, but in cases where that control scheme breaks down, we now made it more flexible, and we're gonna make it. Oh shit! We're gonna make it more flexible as we go. Oh, that's too bad. That's too bad. Okay, I think it's a good time to start talking about the reactions that we've had and the feedback that we've received on the first build. Because we've been thrilled. We released this thing, and we were hoping people would pick it up and play with it, and
you did.
You certainly did. Beyond our expectations, you really did, and it's been just phenomenal to see. So overall, the reactions have been just fantastic and really positive, and where there has been critique, which we were looking for as well, it has been really constructive, and everybody's really trying to think along with us, trying to figure out how we can make this into the best possible thing we can make it. So, just first overall impression of how that works. Super happy with how this whole development process is going now.
Yeah, I'm also happy that we did this and we get all these reactions, because previously we were too much focused on big releases with very little feedback from the community, and we're changing it now, and it's already working.
Yeah, it's already doing its work. Yeah. So this is a video by Sean Dobbins, who is both an experienced skydiver in real life and also is an avid player of Volo Airsport and other video games. And so he took to this parachute simulation to just see what he could do with it, given what he already knows about parachuting.
Think his goal was to make the smallest possible parachute?
That's something he certainly started working towards. He has a love for small and fast and nimble parachutes that take a lot of finesse to control, but that you can just do a lot with. And you can see here that he's going in for high-speed swoops, and then as soon as he levels out, he just fits in another bow roll. That's what he's trying to do in practice here. And the super cool thing about that is just the week before I released this prototype, or before we released this prototype, before we sent it out into the wild, I saw someone on Facebook who is a skydiver and a parachutist practicing just this move over a lake to try and make it safe, because you're going very fast, very close to the ground, and you're doing something very dangerous. You wanna practice that in a certain area where you can simulate it, but not instantly die if you do it wrong. So you practice this over lake, and so that shows it's a really new thing. People are only just starting to get to this type of maneuver in real life, and yet here in game is Sean Dobbins pulling it off. That's a beautiful convergence of real life and fiction, I suppose, as Volo Airsport is. So really happy to see that. And then at the end of the video, let's see. So let's say right over here, he starts doing some terrain flying as well, some speed flying, close to some hills and some trees. And it's just really exciting to watch, and it reminds me so much of how people actually do this thing in real life. People like Yoki Sommer. I cannot for the life of me pronounce his name properly. Probably. But like, we know videos of people doing this in real life, and it looks much like this. So again, I'm really happy about that. I didn't know the game could do this. I haven't actually played the game myself like this.
Me neither. I wasn't able to build a parachute like this.
Yeah, and then of course you build it, and then you have to learn how to control it. And we're so busy developing that we often fail to really push these systems to limits. And there it is. Yeah. Anyway,
so I think the next thing for the parachutes is to have a sharing system, right?
Yes.
So we can all play with Sean Dobbins' chutes. That would be great.
Yeah, exactly. There's two things that are interesting about let's call them the Dobbins experiments then. One is the parachutes that he has designed, and if you could just look them up in game through a browser and find them and then play with them yourself instantly, that'd be great. If you could then modify them and try out your own variations of them because you think you know better, that'd be even cooler. And then if you can also just see the videos of what he's able to do with the parachutes that he's designed, that really completes the picture. So that's the kind of sharing system that we're looking forward to making ultimately.
Yeah, definitely. But I think that the sharing system is mostly interesting in that if you, let's say you download the Dobbins parachute and you learn to fly it a little bit, you learn to tweak it a little bit because you want to understand what makes it such a good shoot, or maybe you know how to make it better. I think that kind of experimentation is really key to playing this game. Yeah,
it's a plaything, but it's also a tool for increasing your understanding of the world around you and the things that you care about. And we happen to care a lot about moving through space and through air and using the properties of aerodynamics to do really cool stuff. And having this sharing system in there, it just increases your possibility to understand everything and play with it. Yeah. So that's cool. And we should definitely be doing that. So look for that in next versions. As we go on and develop this.
Yes.
But there's been much more feedback. Let's go over the other things.
Yeah. Let's see. What do we have?
Actually, so Sean Dobbins had a second remark on the YouTube page as a reaction to the last show, and it's because we mentioned the possibility of real world locations and how real world locations often only have one single feature that's really cool, and the rest is kind of dull. And he mentioned Chamonix in France as a place that actually has lots of cool elements in it that you can create thousands of interesting lines with. So it's much more suitable for a Volo level than some other real-world locations. And so yeah, that is a good place to maybe consider doing. If we're going to go for any real-world location, that's certainly a very good one to do.
Yeah, but still, we could... it's still not sure if we're ever gonna do something like that, right?
No, it's definitely going to be in the back of our minds as we design new levels, but we're still on the fence as to whether we should very specifically do that area. Because if we start doing that level, then where do we stop? Because you're never done trying to emulate that real world location, and we're gonna probably. Like there's villages near there, for example, that are we going to put them in there or not? And is it really Chamonix if we don't put those in? It's a difficult question to answer. And if we just use fictional locations, those questions just become less interesting. It's more about, would the village add anything gameplay-wise? And I think that's a much more useful angle to take when deciding whether to model a village.
It's a simulation after all.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. It's a simulation. It's a tool. It's a plaything. But we have to carefully manage our attention and choose where to put our energy.
Right. So next thing, how much customizability are we expecting to leave in the final, if there is anything such as final version of this parachute thing?
Oh yeah, a question by Fat Lobster, whose name I definitely appreciate. Thank you, Fat Lobster, for that wonderful question and that wonderful username. Everything you can customize in this now is going to be in the game forever, and the customizability is only ever going to increase. It's not going to decrease. But what that means, though, is that the customizability as it's represented right now is going to have to change as well. Because if we add more customizable stuff, and we keep doing it this way, it means this list of sliders is going to just grow endlessly until you can't make sense of it anymore. So, as we add more things that you can tweak and affect, we'll start making more elegant interfaces that make it more intuitive for you to interact with and change all these things. But it's certainly going to be more powerful instead of less powerful.
It's going to be more powerful and easier to understand.
Yeah.
Because now it's not really clear what all these options do. But I think in the upcoming versions we'll add tooltip-like systems where you can get a proper description of what a setting does
and just
what it affects.
More intuitive ways also than individual one-dimensional sliders to play with things.
Right.
There's much more intuitive tools for reasoning about the spatial and physical relationships of parachutes and seeing their effects as well. Like one thing that I'm really excited about is right now the only way you can sort of get a feel for how your parachute behaves and what it does is first you tweak some things in here and then you go, okay, now let's fly it and see what it does. But what if you could get a better sense for how this thing would fly while you're editing these parameters? So what if I could more instantly on this screen right now see what the cornering performance of this parachute would be if I made it flat versus if I made it this? What if I could just instantly see that? And there's of course a limited sense to which we can achieve it, but we can do a better job than we're doing right now. And that's how this is going to just be at once a more powerful system, but also a more intuitive system as we go.
Yeah. Cool. Good answer. Anyway.
Thank you.
Next question. When is this going to be integrated into Volo?
I think you have a pretty good idea of how that's going to work.
Yeah, I do.
So tell me.
Yeah, so I think that we'll first do a couple more of these standalone releases, just because we can get feedback really quickly and you don't have to buy it yet. So anyway, but after that we're going to add this into Volo in such a way that you can, before starting, choose whether you want to use a wingsuit or whether you want to use a parachute. So that's going to be the first step.
Yeah.
And there's not going to be any deployment yet of the parachute while wingsuiting or anything complicated like that. That's going to be in later versions, but in any case, parachutes will reach Volo actually not that quite far in the future.
No, we're just on a very concrete basis. We're thinking 1 or 2 releases to really polish this thing up, because in its separate state, it's easy to work on this really fast. But then eventually it'll just get to the point pretty soon where we're like, okay, it's going to take us 1 or 2 afternoons to do most of the work to put this in the rest of the game, in the full game, in at least one of the simplest ways that we can think of. And then we're just going to do it.
Yeah.
And then deployment won't be there yet, but because we have both the wingsuit and the parachute next to each other, it becomes easier to think about, well, how are we going to do deployment? And then we can start working on that. That's the right time to start working on things like parachute deployment and start pooling those things together. And that's how it's going to work.
All right. So, someone mentioned whether we're going to add additional spawn points to this specific standalone release.
I think yes. But
yeah? Okay.
But the moment we start doing it, it's going to be very close to merging with the full version of Volo Airsport, like we just discussed, I think. That's kind of where it's, if we start adding multiple spawn points in this, it just gets very close to the full game. And,
right, so I think we should add spawn points in... We have spawn points in Volo, so why not use them, right?
Yeah.
So you get spawn points when you buy Volo.
Yeah, that's it's an interesting threshold for us to set. Like, we could add spawn points to this and still keep it free, but that's also the point where we have to start maybe thinking about putting it behind a paywall, because we have to get paid.
We do have to get paid.
Yeah, so we'll see, but now you know what the trade-offs there are, as far as we're concerned.
Yeah. Alright.
Oh no, I messed that up. Yeah, next thing.
Next question is whether we should use or look at Elite Dangerous input mapping, which I haven't done yet. Yeah,
that was Jens's question. Thank you for that, because the concern is we're adding more and more stuff that you can map all these buttons on your controller and your keyboard to, and eventually, if that list is like 250 items, it's just a long list that you need to scroll through and then individually go click. That's going to be this button. It's going to take you ages. We don't want that. And Elite Dangerous is a game that, according to Jens at least, has done an interesting job of making that easier, more intuitive. Mm-hmm. So we're definitely going to take a look at that, but we haven't done it yet.
Yeah. Alright. So, next question is going to be more about the parachute and how it works. So we have Mihawkler actually commenting on some of the physical properties of the parachute and how it works. And I think it's better if you comment on that.
Oh, sure. So he had 3 main questions, or 3 main points. One is, with actual parachutes, if you start adding more cells to it, we'll go into the editor and we'll just go increase the number of cells. What you can see in the current system is that for each cell that is added, you get more lines. Now, in reality, you don't really want to do this, because each line that you add is also going to add drag, which will slow you down. So, with actual parachutes, what they usually do is say, okay, we do lines, but we do it for every other cell. Or if you put them in between cells, like skip one place where you would ordinarily put lines, and just reduce the amount. Now, you would say maybe that makes your parachute less stable, because now there's less support everywhere to retain the shape. But as long as the cells are pressurized, that's not really a problem. And so, yeah, that's eventually what this system will be able to do, and I hope that next update I'll be able to have put that in. That's just a good idea. Let's see, there's he was also wondering, hey, you have this lateral division into number of cells. Like this is very little. This is very much, and it makes the whole thing more organic and more actually physically correct in a way. Why aren't you also doing that for the chord line of the parachute? So if you I can't do this from here, but if you look at it from the side, let's say this is the parachute, you look at it from the side instead of from the back or the front. Oh yeah, you can play around with it actually. Then why can't the wing like bend like this? That's what it actually does in real life as well, and that's what gives it different lift and drag relationships. So why aren't you modeling that? It's a very good point, and I think I could actually model the aerodynamic response of the airfoil around any particular section in a better way than I'm doing now, but it would mean that it requires more computation from your computer, because there's more moving parts. And for multiplayer later on, that would also mean there's more actual physical state to synchronize over the internet from one machine to the other. And that requires more bandwidth and all those things. So it would make the simulation more coherent, and I could make it more complete in a way. But it also means that as far as performance and multiplayer synchronicity go, the problem gets more complex that way. So it's a trade-off, and in a sense I'm trying to do the most with the least, and that's why the current version of the parachutes look this way, and it's more focused on flexibility in the axis that we're using now, and sort of fudging over the details of some other parts of the simulation. Ouch! Oh, is he gonna? Yeah, okay, nice job.
I was aiming for this. Anyway.
Very nice.
Good explanation. Thanks.
Openings and cutaways, finally, we've already kind of discussed those before. We're gonna do them, but we're gonna try and work those in when they become more relevant. And that's probably when we're gonna start putting in, or when we're gonna start putting together the parachutes and the wingsuiting into a single gameplay experience. That is...
It's not very stable. This is how I like to play.
Oh, this is how I hope many people will play. So this is a bit of feedback sent to us by William, let me see if I can pronounce this right, DiGiacomo. And he is both a builder of real-time simulation software, like in a sense we are too, and a very experienced parachutist and skydiver. And so he played around with the model, and he saw some things that worked and some things that didn't work, and tried his very best to put into to words and to pictures how he sees it. And a whole bunch of this stuff I was already aware of when we decided to release, because we know it's work in progress and we know the simulation isn't all that yet, and in certain areas of the simulation it just doesn't make sense yet. But it's really good to see that he was able to identify those things really clearly and explain them to us in his own words, and not only that confirm our presumptions, the simulation not being that great in some areas yet, but it also really helped to increase our understanding of why those things are the case as well. And now we can, with much more clarity, go back into the simulation and change things around for the better. And so this is just on a technical level, this is some of the most valuable feedback we've had, and I'm just amazed that someone would want to take the time to do all this, because this must have taken some time to pull together. So thank you, William. That is very fantastic stuff. Very useful.
Yeah, it's absolutely great to see this kind of feedback.
Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. So.
Yeah, let's leave the details for later. We've already been talking a lot.
Yeah. Okay, next and last thing is the new website.
Yeah. Oh, wait, let me alt-tab back to it. here it is.
Yeah.
Or here's where it's at right now. So talk us through it.
Right, so what you're looking at is a work in progress of the new Volo Airsport website. And the reason why we're building a new site is mainly to accommodate more different types of players. Like the current site is more focused on people who do not know the game yet, and it doesn't even do a really great job at that, I think. But anyway, we also want to provide information for people who already know the game or already own the game and want to know what's new. So
we one of the biggest problems that we have in terms of communication is that we do put new versions out, and we do put development news out there, but then still there's just going to people who miss all that because we're not distributing it in the right way. And maybe they go to the website because surely that's where you can figure out what's new, and it doesn't really show you anything. That's not good.
Yeah.
That also, like, one final thing that I don't know in that menu. Oh, you're holding the controller. One of the final things is the website again and the show. They're not the only things. One of the things that we really want to do is also just when you boot up the game is you get an in-game view of what are the new updates. Is there a new show? Is there a new blog post? Just so whenever you fire it up or whenever you interact with anything that's Volo Airsport, it's much easier for you to figure out, hey, what's happening, what's new, and how do I get it?
Yeah.
That said, I think we've covered everything that we want to cover.
I think so, and if we didn't, then the next episode's gonna be about that. Right?
Exactly. So, like, comment, and subscribe. Please buy Volo Airsport. Please play the game, play the parachute release, try it out, and let us know what you think. We really do care. And then in 2 weeks, we'll get back to it, and we'll see where we're at then.
Yeah, we'll see you later.
Yeah, good. Bye.
Bye.